All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 7th, 2024 meeting of the Henrietta Town Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca,
Here.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford.
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Supervisor Schultz, I make a motion to approve the February 14th minutes.
Second.
Any comment? So one of the things in the clarification, and help me in case I forget, when we were doing I call them on the fly motions, we made some changes to them and never restated the motions. It makes it tougher for the clerks because they then have to interpret those alterations when they're doing the letters that go out. So the decision letter. So I basically asked her to make it clear for these minutes to include what they put in decision letters, but going forward, if we make changes to the on the flies, let's restate them just before we go to vote for it.
Makes sense. I saw that email.
Yeah, just so it's crystal clear. So, our town clerks, like I said, came up with a good solution as far as pulling the language from the decision letters, which I thought worked great. So. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have special use permit application number 2023-048, Capital Cannabis, Consulate Cannabis LLC, 3333 West Henrietta Road, Suite 43, to operate a retail cannabis store. Do we have a representative here? Or online?
Yes, Stephanie Schuman of Leaf Legal for Capital Cannabis. The principal, Nicola Doyle, is also here online.
Right. Is Suite 43 the new number or the old number? I know you switched suites. I just want to make sure we have the right number.
You're muted, Nicola.
Okay.
She's muted.
Sorry. Suite 43 is our new number. Yeah.
Okay, 43 is a new one. Okay, just making sure. Okay, do you want to talk about your application?
Yes.
What would you like to know?
Tell us about your plans, touch specifically on security, the general layout and proposal. I know it's in the plans, but I'd like to hear you guys talk about it.
Did you want me to start? Okay, so the security plan is something that is required by the state of New York. So it's something that we put a lot of thought into, and it's a definite priority to make sure that we're compliant. But not only for that, it's about customer safety and product management and control and diversion prevention. We will have an ISG integrated security system. They have over a decade of experience of cannabis specific experience, and they exceed all the regulatory requirements in all states where cannabis is legal. The plan will include a high quality video system, a network of different cameras, that blanket the entire dispensary and all of its operations. And they're at all the point of sale areas, on the safe and the vaults and anywhere where really cannabis is. And then the other components of the security plan include carefully taking verifying the identification of the non-employees that are coming and going, including the customers, making sure everyone is over 21, making sure that the product is not accessible. So if there will be like boxes, they will be empty or filled with cotton or something like that. They will not be accessible on the main floor of the dispensary. There's a product safe room and there's a fulfillment area, which is completely secure. Everything will be date stamped. There's a possibility if local law enforcement ever needed or ever requested access, it would be granted without question. The cashier stations will be equipped with panic buttons, and all of the activities will be monitored 24/7. And the perimeter alarm communicates with an internal designee and a third-party commercial central monitoring station if an intrusion is ever detected.
Great. That sounds very extensive. Glad to hear that. I know at the first site you were looking at, if I remember correctly, now I could be getting the two buildings confused, but one of the buildings had the safe. Does this one have the safe?
Yeah, they both do. They're both former
Yeah,
banks.
safe. Yeah. So that's great because you're just going to reuse the bank safe, right?
And that will be part of our safety plan. We'll also be adding extra safes in our secure rooms.
Great. Other questions?
I should probably know the answer to this, but I was reading your point of sales information. Is it a law in New York State that it has to be cash only?
No, it isn't. It's the opposite. Actually, they will try to avoid cash. Debit cards will be accepted. There is a way to sign up with a payment services provider and actually take a credit card. For pickup orders and delivery orders online, the customer has the option of actually using a check because they just ask for bank account and routing or some other debit or form like that. Cash can be accepted, but it's not likely to be an issue.
Have they resolved? So has there been, I know when the cannabis was first being legalized, there were concerns over whether banks could essentially be involved in a transaction for cannabis because of the federal issues. Has that been resolved?
It's yes and no. So the big banks are still not, their compliance department, it's just not worth it for them to have the cannabis companies, the small business cannabis person who has like 1 to 3 dispensaries. It's not worth it for them. So they don't accept the clients, but the banks, it's up to them and their compliance department whether they accept these the smaller cannabis companies that have like 1 to 3 dispensaries, and many of them do. We did find a bank just to be compliant, not just with the cannabis laws, but when you form an entity, either an LLC or a corporation, you need a separate bank account in the state of New York. If your entity is formed in the state of New York, we have a compliant banking. And, you know, if cash turns out to be an issue, like they have too much cash, they can either add a service or switch to a bank that picks up multiple times a day. If they were in a maybe like New York City, some of the dispensaries are using banks that pick up cash, you know, more than once a day. But it just all depends on how much cash flow there is and how much cash on hand, you know, there will be.
Right. No, I'm glad to hear that there's banks that, because like I said, when it was first being discussed, there was a question of whether they could use any banking. That's, I believe, where council members' question comes from, because that was a concern when we were first considering whether to allow cannabis adult retail dispensaries in the town. So glad to hear that it's at least partially resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for our state application, we needed to provide our banking information that had to be with a cannabis regulated bank. So we have that all set up and in line, ready to go.
Right. Other questions?
I thought I saw it before, but I can't find it now. How many other dispensaries do you own?
Me, none.
Okay. Okay. And did I see a liquor store business or something?
Yeah, so that's my current occupation. I manage and run liquor stores in New York.
Okay. And then on the security, will they have dedicated security outside and inside, or is it just security in general for both?
There will be somebody patrolling the parking lot, yes, as well. Smoking on site or in the parking lot is a huge concern of ours, and we'll also be addressing issues to the parking lot. It's lacking lights surrounding the whole area. We spoke with the management company. They're going to upgrade the lights. They're all flickering currently.
Yes.
It also has many potholes. They've agreed to, if we get permitted, they will fill in all the potholes in the parking lot and just make it safer for everybody that's using that area, along with our store.
Not that it's your concern, but they should fix the potholes either way.
They should, yeah. But
So,
I have a question, Stephanie and/or amusement or enjoyment spot?
Yes, but it's I think it's still further, I mean, in my opinion, it's further enough away, but I want to point out that for the state, the signage is minimalistic by law. They cannot advertise, they cannot use sandwich board, they cannot attract, and they're not looking to attract minors and families really. Like this is an adult activity. It's adult use product, just like a bottle of vodka. It's an adult thing. They have no interest in attracting it. They just want to clean up the area, keep it nice and presentable and nice and discreet.
yeah, and from the new location at 43, you're out of the direct line of the trampoline park. We've checked it from multiple angles, and it's definitely a lot more discreet than the previous location we had in mind.
But you are aware that we have an ordinance of 1,000 feet.
So
Oh, okay. Does this mean that
So let me address that
can
because,
we ask for a variance?
well, no, you don't actually need a variance. Let me address that. So New York State sent out clarification that you cannot extend those distances. So we cannot say 100% no because it's within 1,000 feet. New York State calls for 500 feet. What we can do within the 1,000 feet is we can apply some additional requirements under the special use permit. So that's why if you'll notice, it's that 1,000 feet isn't directly in the zoning regulations. It's in the areas when we're looking, the considerations when we're reviewing the special use permit. So that's an update from when the law first went into place. They hadn't specified whether the towns had the ability to expand those radii or not. They have since clarified that the towns cannot expand the radii, but again, what we've done instead is we basically say if it's within the 1,000, so if it's within 500, it can't be located there, period. It's against state law. For us, from 500 to 1,000 during the special use permit, we can put some additional conditions on the property that might not be there if there was no such business anywhere within the 1,000. So that's how the ruling from the Office of Cannabis Management came down. That came down January-ish, February.
How does our ordinance read?
Our ordinance, again, we had an indication that this was coming. So what it basically says is that ours still says that within 1,000, the town board, from 500 to 1,000, the town board has discretion as to whether we deny it because of that distance.
Gotcha.
The Office of Cannabis, since we've put that in place, the Office of Cannabis Management says, no, you can't. But when I reached back out to them, I said, well, can we put in, so for instance, one of the things I'm going to ask for is at the site, when I last saw it, it looks like there's some dead trees along the western side. So let's require vegetative screening in there. we also, like we did with Rise Cannabis, we restrict the signage even further potentially from what New York State requires, so as to not, as I put it, glorify the consumption of cannabis. So it's like I said, under New York State Office of Cannabis Management rules, we can't increase those distances, but we can take those things into consideration when we're approving the special use permit from a condition standpoint.
Okay. You have another question?
No, go ahead.
So your liquor establishments, where are they located?
So I manage them. I don't own them. They're
Okay.
in Manhattan is my job.
All right, I have no other further questions.
Any? Okay. I don't have any, I'm just making a note on a resolution I put forth. Do we have any comments from the public? Anybody wish to make a comment on this?
I'm not leaving.
Yeah, Steve, any chance we can table this? Because I can tell you, I was under the impression the 1,000 feet law I'm not sure if I'm 100% understanding it right now, is they're saying 500 feet and we can just make certain changes after between 500 and 1,000, but we can't turn them down.
It's not that you can't turn them down. You can't turn them down because they're within 1,000 feet. If there's other reasons to turn them down, you can.
Okay.
But again, typically what happens with special use permit, you don't turn them down. You say, this is what you need to
Right.
correct to do it. Now, one of the things we done initially, the first site was technically measured door to door, the way New York State specifies, was greater than 500 feet
Mhm.
and was technically legal. However, that first site, and actually, can you do me a favor, Becky? Could you pull up that PDF?
Well, the first site was medical, right?
No.
Right.
Are you talking about Rise?
That's
Yeah, I'm thinking
different.
of Rise.
No,
Okay.
I mean, their
First site.
their
Okay.
first site. They were
Oh.
first looking at the Summit Federal Credit Union. It was technically door to door, 500 feet, but when it's directly visible, it's directly across, and so we asked them to alter their plans. Now, I don't remember I don't think they ever came to a hearing. They met with us and I expressed that I know there was going to be concern from the board. So this is just showing the proposed site from Capital Cannabis. And those lines, they're a little hard to see. They're basically, the blue line is from door to door. That's how New York State measures it. And of course, for me, that's a soft focus. There's 700 and Becky, you're right in front of
That's
the.
709.19 feet.
Okay, so almost 710 feet door to door. And then the red line is how we talked about measuring it, which was nearest point to nearest point. And that one is,
607.58 feet.
okay, so again, both of them are, no matter which way you measure it. Now, New York State is pretty clear. It's point to point. But you can see there's the building to the left of the one that they're currently proposing. That was the old Summit Federal Credit Union. That one was right across the parking lot. Technically, door to door, it met the it was just over the 500.
Mhm.
But we asked them to look at the other suite and they were willing to do it. Could you go to the next one? Next page. Yep, thanks. So this is Rise Cannabis. This one was already approved. This one was the medical, although they came in for medical and adult when they first came in. They could only be medical for the first 2 years, but their plan was always to go to an adult and they weren't going to relocate here unless they were approved. So we had the same concerns. The distances are actually a little bit shorter. But we had the same concerns because there was the Clubhouse Fun Center there. And so on Rise Cannabis, we made it clear that they couldn't have any signage that glorified cannabis use, we basically said they couldn't have any outside activity under tents, that type of stuff. In fact, they were talking about that during their grand opening and we said, nope, your special use permit doesn't allow that, and they stopped it. So, I looked at what regulations, what restrictions we put on Rise, and I put them on the same one for here. Go to the next one, page, please. So this is the view from the front. Well, let me rephrase that. It's actually the back of the building. It's the street side. I called it front, but realized afterwards when I saw their drawings, this is the back of the building, but it's the Jefferson Road side. As you can see, you cannot see the trampoline place. You cannot see Altitude. The Summit Federal Credit Union's largely in the way. I mean, it literally completely blocks the view from this point. Go to the next slide. This is from the front of the building or the plaza side. And if you look through those trees, and I'm not sure whether that was captured, it's just whether those trees are leaf off or what, although there's leaves on some of the other ones. So my fear is those are dead. And this is one of the things that I put on as a requirement on the resolution, would be to add vegetative screening there, additional vegetative screening. So again, like the other view, you can't even see this from Altitude. Go to the next slide. And then this is the view from Altitude. And as you can see, there's a number of trees, then the Capitol, or excuse me, then this former Summit building. And then you can barely make out that it was a former Key Bank. You can barely make out this building. And so I think if they were to add that additional vegetative screening, and if you look at where they've got their signage, I don't think you'd even be able to see it from the Altitude. You know, so again, in looking at that, they meet the state requirements. And again, I think if we put some additional conditions on the property, as far as I'm concerned, and you guys have your own opinions, I think they meet the requirements and the intent of when we put this forward. So I'm not going to bother. If we decide to act on this tonight, I'll read it fully with the resolution, but some of the stuff, there's the normal ones we put on everybody. But then there's a condition that says that due to the proximity to properties whose primary business is directed towards minors, the applicant must refrain from any external signage that glorifies or encourages the use of marijuana as determined by the town board or the director of building and fire prevention. So in other words, if we see it or the building department sees it and they feel it glorifies, we can basically say, no, you got to take that sign down. And then it's specifically noted that in the opinion of the town board, the Capital Cannabis name and proposed signage contained in the application does not glorify or encourage the use of marijuana. So the way you have it signed today, the building, the way you have it looking today, that's okay. You couldn't add the line I always use is from a Bob Dylan tune. You can't put up a big sign that says everybody must get stoned, right? Then the other thing we have, again, the stuff about following all the rules, getting your cannabis OCM license. The one question I have on here, I'll come back to, has to do with the drive-through structure. But then I basically also say that additional vegetative screening be added to the western edge of the property. And I put as approved by the planning board. So I would want you to put that in your site plan and, till it satisfies them. And again, it's for the purpose of screening this building from the Altitude
All
trampoline.
points well taken, Mr. Supervisor. Could I have the attorney read what our ordinance says?
In the special additional provisions for certain special permits, and this is for cannabis retail dispensaries. Cannabis retail dispensaries may be established no less than 1,000 feet from any school or grounds, park or playground, church or house of worship, residence, or business which is primarily focused on providing services or products to children, including, for example, childcare facilities or recreational facilities with a specific youth component. And then how to measure the setback and the like. But to comment further, I would say that, you know, the regulations are rather new. The thing you can most liken this to is the liquor authority. And really, the localities have virtually no authority to regulate the sale of alcohol. They're preempted by the New York State Liquor Authority regulations. It would not surprise me if, as this evolves, the same thing happens with cannabis. And apparently it's starting to, because they're saying you can't be more restrictive than we are in terms of these distances. So this would be unenforceable in all likelihood if challenged.
Doesn't that have also though have a clause right in it? And like I said, I realize I think that's unenforceable, but doesn't it have a clause in there that the town board may elect to reduce those distances?
In May. Yes. The buffer requirement, this is in subsection B, may be reduced by the town board by up to any lesser minimums otherwise required by the state. In considering whether the reduction may be appropriate and the extent to which it may be reduced, the town board shall consider whether there is sufficient physical barrier between the dispensary and the buffered use, whether and to what extent advertising, signage, and or other activity associated with the same, which will be visible from the buffered use, and to what extent any reduced buffer might otherwise negatively impact the buffered use.
So the way I've kind of been interpreting it is that because they basically said we can't reduce it less, we have to reduce it, or we can't make it more. We have to reduce it from 1,000 to 500. But in doing that, based on our stuff, we can require that they provide this screening, that they can provide this, you know, that we can put some limitations on the signage. Their code does not address signage. Well, I shouldn't say that. They do address some signage, as she stated. They have not come out with a ruling that says that towns can't have that their signage statutes can't be more restrictive than the state's. They did expressly state that with regards to the distances. Also, they said that not just the distances to churches and other stuff, but also distances between any two dispensaries. Now they have a restriction. I don't remember what that distance is, but they have a restriction that two dispensaries can't go very close together.
So they probably have for liquor licenses and stuff too.
Correct.
Looking at this, I just see that we have an abundant amount of cannabis. We got more of those coming out in our town than we got
Well, we've got.
car washes and storage facilities and.
No, well,
And
so
whatnot.
just to be clear, we have two. We've had a bunch of, right, we have two. We've had a number of applicants. At least one of which I believe was turned down because the applicant called me wanting to talk, saying that he believes we have the wrong impression about his business. Unfortunately, one of the things that the Office of Cannabis Management does not do, and I've requested that they do this, they don't notify us on the disposition of a license. So like I found out that the two got approved. One I found out because the applicant called to thank us for the process that was MJ Dispensary. I found about the Rise Cannabis getting their retail license because a friend of mine was performing in the band at the grand opening.
Oh, I rode by there, walked in, they had Reed was in there, Andre Reed was in there promoting the place and everything else. Very surprised.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like I said, Office of Cannabis Management does not notify us when one's been approved, nor do they notify us when one has been denied. And again, the reason I believe it was denied is because the applicant called, it was one that we as a town expressed misgivings over that applicant because it's the applicant who had was giving away pot with the sale of t-shirts. And also there is a police record of a plainclothes cadet under the age of 21 was able to go into the store and make a purchase. So like I said, some have been denied. I don't know about the others. Other than no one's come in for a building permit beyond that. So I don't know how many they're going to approve ultimately. If I had to guess, I would say it's a maximum of 6, but I don't think they're going to go that much. And I just say that based off of, if I remember, I don't know if it was a full mile between, I don't think it was quite that far. If it is, then this location wouldn't work because it's within a mile of the of Rise, but anyway,
Hi, may I offer some clarification? It's 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet. Thank you. Okay.
The other thing I would like to say is that there's a worksheet about advertising and signage, and I don't see how it could possibly get like more restrictive. Like even if it's already so restrictive, they're not even allowed to use logos or anything. It's plain text and no bright colors. Like it says, signs and dispensary exteriors may be illuminated with plain, uncolored lights and a number necessary to ensure public safety, to alert individuals to the location, just so you can find it, and to allow the consumers to read the signs at nighttime. That's the maximum amount of illumination you can use is for safety. Other than that, it's just plain text.
See,
Yeah.
we haven't gotten those updated notices either. So this is my problem, is they don't send us the updates for the stuff that go to the business. So that's news to us. That didn't used to be the case. What's interesting, I wish we could get them to do that same rule for the smoke shops.
Right, no blinking, no neon, no illumination whatsoever, unless it's a security risk, to show the numbers of the address.
Right.
Yeah.
No, thank you for letting us know. That's good to know. So, yeah, this to our attorney's point earlier, this is an evolving, it's one of the things that was frustrating to us is they legalized cannabis and then they wrote the rules. I really wish they would have written all the rules and then legalized cannabis. So it's been changing as we've been going, which I'm sure is why a number of towns opted out initially, because they were afraid of where those changes were going. I've always believed that it's going to end up very similarly, again, as our attorney pointed out, I think it's going to end up very similar to the liquor laws. And that's, to be honest, that's how I personally view cannabis. It's essentially similar to alcohol. Okay, so Mike, you essentially didn't make it, but you were stating, did you want to make a motion to table?
Yes. Look into
Okay.
this a little bit more because I
I'm personally don't feel a need, but you can put forth a motion and we can vote on whether to table or
We
not.
have a guy in the audience.
Oh, yeah, come on up.
Question or something?
Good evening. I'm Paul Veely. I was in here a couple months ago and I received the cannabis permit for 324 Jefferson Road.
324, which one's that?
Next to McGregor's, the old Daily Trailer building.
Oh, okay.
Of course, waiting on licensing. So I originally wanted to come down tonight because this was all news to me about this 500 and 1,000-foot rule, because the board was pretty adamant that I was outside of that 1,000-foot range, which we well are.
Right.
And then my other issue is that I thought the spirit of this whole thing was to not stack these places on top of each other, as to your comment. So now, I mean, if you're going to have Rise, Capital, and me, I mean, you're
So
gonna,
again, just to be clear, the town doesn't have the ability to say we can't stack them.
no, right.
We
but-
don't have that authority.
So you don't even have the judgment or I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but
As long
to
as
say
they're
we
more,
don't want to over density.
as long, if they're over 1,000 feet from your location,
So that's how that goes.
that's how it goes.
Okay.
It's, you know, like people say, you know, like at one point there were 4 drugstores, one at each corner of Calkins and East Henrietta
Right.
Road. And they're like, why did you put them there? Well, first off, we didn't put them there. People come and say, we want to build this here. And it's whether it's a legal use. Distance from the other. Now, again, Office of Cannabis Management does have that. I thought it was greater than 1,000. But they have that 1,000-foot distance. I don't know whether they'll get approval of this because of the location of the other two. I don't know. Again, the Office of Cannabis, workings of the Office of Cannabis Management are a bit of a mystery, but like, this is the first I heard that you got approved. Is it final or was it conditional?
No, it was final. You approved it.
No. You're talking special use permit. I'm talking from the Office of Cannabis Management.
Oh, no,
Got
we,
that yet.
waiting on the license.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, they canceled the January licensing issuing because they were only going to hand out 4 licenses statewide.
Right.
The February, they issued 38 statewide, and that was cultivators, retail, medical, everything. I mean, when they're supposed to be issuing 1,500 total. And as of now, there is no March meeting even scheduled to hand out
Right.
licenses. So the process has become extremely bogged down.
So again, from a special use permit standpoint, it's not a first come, first in, first served type of basis. You know, in fact, I don't remember if yours was one of the site, but one of the sites, they had multiple applicants for the same site,
No, not us.
multiple licensees. So for that one property, now they got the special use permit for the property. They chose one of the candidates to be the leading candidate. But again, a special use permit is a land use decision. It is not a licensing.
No,
The
right. That's
licensing is handled
OCM.
by
Right.
cannabis.
Yeah.
Office of Cannabis Management, yeah. So I don't know that they will put the 3 right next to each other. I don't know. But again, that's not part of our consideration. Our consideration is to whether this is an approved location for use as an applicant.
Right.
In
I
the
understand.
early going, they would do a conditional license. And then you had so much time to find a site. Now what they're doing is, as I understand it, is you can't submit an application unless you have
Right. You have to have a lease or
Right.
own a building.
yeah.
What's the name of your business, if you don't mind I ask?
Well, so I'm not involved in I'm the
Oh,
landlord.
you own the building?
I own the building, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's at 324 Jefferson Road?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, so
Where's
it's
that near? East River?
No, right next to McGregor's.
McGregor's.
Oh,
the old trailer.
The old daily trailer sales.
okay, yeah, I know where you are. Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
So again, it's
Sell the
that,
Yeah,
right, that seemed like a great location,
okay.
right?
Yeah, the tenant's excited. A lot of traffic, good
I
location.
just don't, like I said.
Waiting
I
on the
just-
state.
And just to be clear, yours was not the tenant or the applicant who we
No,
wrote, bad opinion of.
yeah, no.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like I said, I don't know where. I don't know ultimately what the Office of Cannabis Management is going to do. I don't know if and when they will approve a 3rd license in Henrietta. There's the 2 current. That's it. Not heard anything further. There are a number of applications in, but there are more applications than could get approved.
Right.
Because some of the locations are close together, and it's essentially up to the Office of Cannabis Management to pick
Right,
which one's approved.
right.
Now, they can, from a licensing standpoint, they can be first in, first served, right? So the point is, if they do it in order and yours is approved and this location here is less than 1,000, I don't know that it is, I'm just saying, but if this location then were 1,000 feet within yours, if yours was already approved, then this one gets denied.
Right, I understand.
But like I said, from a land use decision, that's not us. This is just us saying to the Office of Cannabis Management, yes, this is a location where one could be approved. We're not recommending it be approved. We're just saying it could be. So,
Understood. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
This is a
Can I
far,
say, I just want to point out that New York is unlike New Jersey, which has rolling applications. New York only opens the application windows for discrete periods between 30 and the maximum I've ever seen is 45 days, which was the last one, but usually it's 30 days and they go years without opening it again. For processor, for example, they went 5 years for with nothing. You don't know when they're going to open it again. So the point I'm making is that you will already know how many people were in the last round because one of the components of the application was that the municipality had to be notified within 30 days of the application being submitted at the OCM. So the notifications would have already come. Now, if somebody now sends a notification, who knows when the application window is going to open again? It was supposed to be done contemporaneous with the application last year.
So just to be clear, we know when someone has applied, because to your point, they have to send us that notification.
Correct.
And we send an opinion to the Office of Cannabis Management as to whether we think that is, whether, you know, so what we've done in the past is if they've got an approved site, so for instance, MJ Dispensary came in the market because it's an agricultural use in an agricultural building. It's up to the market as to whether they approved it. They approved it. So that opinion went in saying, this one, you know, we support this application. And by support, I just mean we don't oppose it, right?
Yeah.
For yours, when we got yours, because you didn't have a special use permit yet, we basically said, we don't oppose this, but they have not received a special use permit. And so if you do get your special use permit issued, we would then send an updated letter to the Office of Cannabis Management saying, you know, they have secured a site that is approved. That what I'm saying we don't hear back is once that goes in, the Office of Cannabis Management notifies the applicant you've been approved or denied. They never let us know. So there are, like I said, I think 12 applications total that we have responded to, at least three of which were for the same location. I just don't remember which location it is. And so we don't know, again, we've not heard a thing back on any of those as to whether they've been approved or denied. The only two that I know for a fact have been approved is MJ Dispensary in the Genesee Valley Regional Market and Rise Cannabis, which was originally a medical only and now is both medical and retail, located on J. Scuddy Boulevard. So I don't know if some of those other 12 have been denied. I assume like I said, usually if they've been approved, we'll hear about it at some point because of the building permit. We didn't get a building permit for Rise because they were already operating as a medical facility. So that's why, like I said, I first found out about that one because I knew someone who was performing at their grand opening. Well, the grand opening of the retail. So.
Well, we'll be the first to call you. We'll call you and let you know.
Definitely, I would appreciate an email
Yeah.
or I would very much appreciate that.
You will be
Okay, I will
invited to
call
the
you.
opening too.
Yeah.
All of you guys, thank you.
Okay, so Mike, did you want to put
I made
forth
the
your
motion.
to table?
Yep. I made the motion.
To
I think
table?
he's
Yes,
asking
I'm
to
putting,
make it.
yeah, I make a motion to table.
Okay.
So we can do that.
Is there anyone who seconds it? That's it?
I would tell him to speak into the mic.
Oh.
Because they don't.
So we have a motion to table. Has anyone seconded the motion?
I second it.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. We have a motion to table. The approval or denial of special use permit application number 2023-048. Any further discussion? I personally, again, now I will also admit I've been involved with this from the get-go and continuously, so I get it. You guys were at the very beginning of this, and then we're gone for 2 years.
Right.
And again, it has morphed over that time.
And when you say morphed, really morphed, because when we approved this in December of 21, it was very restrictive where we were gonna put it. And put them, they were all gonna be in adult use areas for people, you know, for folks who don't know, which was nowhere
Well-
near these areas.
I will say, if you go back and read those minutes, we talked about that we were going to look at other areas, but until we had the time to do that, because we wanted to have the law
Yes.
in place prior to January 1, when it was going to become legal,
Mhm.
the only place we approved initially were the adult use. But in that discussion, we'd always talked about doing for more than just the adult use, because those adult use areas are very restrictive and tiny, and
Yes.
someone could even sue us by saying there really isn't space there for these uses.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that want to have these cannabis shops. Some owners don't want it at their place, so it's really tough sometimes to find somewhere where people accept them for business. I want to thank our attorney, Ms. Michelle, for reading the code and the subsequent B to that. That explains everything. I'm very clear on what the rules are
Yep.
and everything. But if you guys want to table this, I'm fine with it. I just know that no matter where I go, I'm smelling marijuana, driving up the street and everywhere else.
One of the things I will say, and you'll get, I believe, the same opinion from the fire district and the sheriff's office. We have had zero problems with either of the legal retailers. All of our problems have been with the smoke shops and the CBD oil places.
Can I comment also on that as well? Within the Office of Cannabis Management, which you're correct is an entity that is under the State Liquor Authority. They have been struggling with limited resources for enforcement, but what they do is once there is a licensed dispensary, they put the resources into because they don't have enough to enforce it statewide they're overwhelmed with the number of illegal dispensaries, but they concentrate on the ones that are trying to operate within the space of the legal dispensaries. So if a legal dispensary goes there, there will be a way for the legal dispensary owners and also other community members to report the smoke shop and then to actually get something taken care of, because they like to put the resources towards shutting down the competition that is preventing the success of the licensees.
So they have been doing a little bit of that, but again, with that said, there was a smoke shop in town who was caught selling massive amounts of cannabis, like it was up at the ceiling. They were also selling psychedelic mushrooms and other illegal substances. There are a number of kids who got sick because where they were mixing their product, there was mold present. And yet they came in, it was shut down, and guess what? 2 weeks later, they're back open again. So the enforcement has a long way to go. It's really frustrating. We have regular meetings with code enforcement officials, town officers, Monroe County sheriffs, Henrietta Fire District, and the ambulance service, CHS Medical. So those shops are a real problem, and they are known to be advertising to kids. And again, we've caught a couple of them that have been selling to minors, which is really problematic. So that's one of the things that I will say as a town leader, it's the most frustrating thing. Again, this is nothing against you. Assuming you're going to be like the other legal operators, we've had zero issues with the legal operators. And including going back to the grand opening that Rob was talking about, originally they were going to offer mix drinks, to infused drinks, they were calling them. And I said, well, Henrietta opted out of on-site consumption. They were, okay, we won't do that. right? Every time, if there's anything even questionable and we bring it up, all the license operators say, okay, we won't do that. I swear it's the opposite. Oh, you're not supposed to do that? Okay, we'll add that to our repertoire for these smoke shops.
Right.
And again, going back to the gaudy, it's like Christmas light displays. It's crazy. And again, if you look at the way they are lit up and laid out, it is absolutely, they are going after that teen and young adult demographic, which is problematic. So.
Mhm.
Okay, so go ahead.
I'd like to add, just add that, I just like to understand this more before I vote on,
Sure.
because this is the first time I'm hearing about the new, the 500 feet versus 1,000 and things like that. So, that's, once again, nothing against you, nothing against the store itself or the dispensary itself. I just need to understand before I vote. That's why I'm asking the table.
Okay, so unless there's any further comments, I'll call the roll on the motion to table. Okay, hearing none, please call the roll on the motion to table.
Councilmember Page,
Council, could you say that again?
Councilmember Page,
No.
Councilmember Belanca,
No.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
No, I understand where you're coming from, Mike, but I will also say that next meeting has a couple items that are probably going to be taking a lengthy amount of time, especially the composting and the rezones, so.
All right, so that's done.
Yep. Okay, so the motion to table did not pass. So if there's any further discussion, I will put a motion on the table to approve.
Yeah, I'd just like to, with due respect to my fellow board members, this application has complied with everything that we've asked them to do. We've already approved Rise Cannabis, which is a shorter distance than this proposed application. And as somebody who's spent his whole professional life trying to reduce drugs and alcohol in our students and our families, and still do, but from a land use situation, I don't know what tabling, if there's anything that would affect tabling other than them waiting longer. And so that's why I voted no. We've already approved in other sites exactly the same application they have. They fit within the boundaries of the 500 feet. There's no reasonable expectation that a child going to Altitude is going to walk through that dump of a parking lot with no sidewalks and no safety security at all, which was the main reason we approved the one near the other amusement park at Rise. And so for those reasons, I had to vote no.
Thank you. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-117, 2024 to approve the special use permit for Capital Cannabis Retail Cannabis Dispensary. I'm not going to read all the whereas clauses. They're pretty standard, basically describing what they're doing. The fact that it does meet the requirement of 295-14B13 because of street frontage. But what I am going to read is all of the conditions. Condition 1, prior to operating the dispensary, that the applicant obtain all necessary government approvals required to operate said retail cannabis dispensary, including a retail cannabis dispensary license from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. 2, that the dispensary shall be operated in accordance with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. 3, that all cannabis sale activity shall take place within the interior of the building or through the drive-through at the existing drive-through structure, if permitted by the Office of Cannabis Management, and all proper customer identification procedures are observed. No sales may occur outside under tents or under a portico or similar physical structure other than the aforementioned drive-through structure. 4, that due to the proximity to properties whose primary business is directed towards minors, the applicant must refrain from any external signage that glorifies or encourages the use of marijuana as determined by the town board or the director of building and fire prevention. It is specifically noted that in the opinion of the town board, the capital cannabis name and proposed signage contained in the application does not glorify or encourage the use of marijuana. 5, that the operation continues its diligence with respect to childproof containers, packaging that does not entice children, buyer identification procedures, monitoring the facility inside and out, and other procedures and protocols to ensure the legal sale of the cannabis products and to help prevent the cannabis products from falling into the hands of minors. The failure to maintain adequate safeguards or a material departure from what was presented to the town board during the application process could result in the revocation of the special use permit by the town board. 6, additional vegetative screening be added to the western edge of the property as approved by the planning board for the purpose of screening the structure from the altitude trampoline park. So those are the conditions. Do you hear any issues with those? The one thing I never got to the discussion, it looks like in your drawing, you were going to potentially pursue a drive-through window using the existing drive-through. Is that
We're going
correct?
to ask permission, yes.
Yeah, so I know that it's required to have permission from the Office of Cannabis Management, so that's why you can only, it's only allowed if you have said permission.
Yeah,
Yes.
we were going to ask both the town and the state.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, and Becky, I will send this to you electronically when I'm done. Any further conditions? I think I captured the vegetative screening was one that as I'd done the analysis, saw that, like I said, I'm not 100% certain whether those trees were dead or just leaf off. Because some trees shed leaves at different times. But I just want to make sure that, you know, when you're standing over at the front of altitude, you don't look out across and see the capital cannabis. Which again, I don't think you will, but if you
Yeah,
can,
I think that's a great idea. It covers all year round when the leaves are off the trees. So we'll have protection, 12 months a year.
perfect,
Mr. Supervisor?
absolutely.
I really think, and no disrespect to any of you guys who are voting for this, but it's definitely too close. I think our laws, our code is ambiguous and it needs to be cleared up. I really think that maybe we should look at, if we're gonna keep approving these, we should look at changing how many feet it is from our schools and all that. We can't change that?
We cannot change that. The state made it crystal clear. A town cannot change that. Nor can we can't change the distance to a school, a park, whatever. It's what the state dictates. Nor
So-
can we,
So you're
change
telling
the
me that if the
distance.
school's there, instead of this amusement park, that this could go through?
it depends on the school because there are different distances for different things. But yes,
Yeah, it's
if it's
definitely,
one of the ones that's within 500 feet, that is the case.
wow. Wow.
But to, Mr. Mastrella's point, that's how it is with liquor. With the liquor licenses, it's the New York State Liquor Authority that dictates that type of stuff. Not the towns.
That being said, I have no further comments.
Yeah, so one of the things we can do is, again, that original code was written prior to the ruling from, and I don't think it was ours that triggered it. It was other towns doing the same thing we did, which was increase the radius. That we just haven't updated it since that law came out.
Well, that's what I'm alluding to, that
Well, we
probably
need-
should update ours.
we
if
should,
that's
but-
really what we're
right.
gonna be approving.
But what we would be, what it would say is basically if it's less than 1,000 feet, I would just have that other portion in there that talks about, then we need to look at. Now, it sounds like, I would still keep the signage in. It sounds like the state's gotten more restrictive than our signage, so I think we're okay. But just in case they ever relax that, I don't think that's something that we want to relax, because again, what we've seen take place with these, with the smoke shops. One of the things we did do is all future smoke shops are under these same rules. So that would be one reason, maybe what we do is we just add unless, in other words, that we do the 1,000 feet unless prohibited by law, because right now I don't think there is a restriction from a state standpoint. In other words, we could put the 1,000 foot for the smoke shop. Because right now the smoke shops are not regulated by Office of Cannabis Management, but we'd have to look into that. So because it's the same, we're using that same rules and regulations, and same zone. It may be worth keeping it in there, but just put in a clause, you know, to handle, you know, unless shorter distances are specified by the state.
I'd be interested to know what else we can do to change our code to not give an exception to things that are really within that radius, but we're accepting it anyway. It's almost like we got 3 dogs, but we say we can have 4. We might as well make it 4.
Except that's the whole purpose of the special use permit. Again, the special use permit is not to deny. The special use permit is to look at and say, here's what you need to do to be approved. So, you know, so again, going back to the ones we just did, they were 4 house trained pugs. That's very different than, you know, 4, I'll use my dog, 4 large German or a Belgian Malinois, right? That's a very different scenario.
But those dogs might be better, well-maintained and behaved than the little dogs. So why would we discriminate against the bigger dog?
Space has something to do with it. And then the other thing that comes into it is, again, at what point, so I live on 8 acres and I don't have, it's hundreds of feet to the nearest neighbor. Right? So again, that's why you make it a special use permit, is because you can't possibly write the rules to cover all those things.
Exactly. Yep.
And those things, you know, again, they're they're not in the section of code that says this is here is hard. It's a hard limit, and to change it, you need to get a variance. It's in the portion for our consideration of a special use permit. And that's why we specifically put it in there, was to give us that flexibility to look at the situation, because I'll give you an example, right? Let's go back to the former daily travel, right? If there was something on the other side of the railroad tracks up on Wright and Henrietta Town Line Road that fell into that category.
Gotcha. In the adult area.
It's well, even off or vice versa, but the point is, or even I'll go further, right? Where the Ultrasonic car wash is, right? From that to the other side of the railroad bridge is less than 1,000 feet. But you have this railroad bridge and embankment that's what, 20, 30 feet high? And so to basically say that, well, I can't have something at the Delta Sonic site because of something that's at Popeyes, that seems extreme. And so that's why it was put in there as a discretion. And we specifically talked about the ability to look at what's in between, right? I'll give you another example. Technically, we did the Mango. It's at the old Burger King site.
That was right across
Technically,
from.
it was within 1,000 feet to Dave and Buster's.
Exactly.
But in between there, I've got West Henrietta Road, I've got a railroad tracks, I've got a creek, I've got all that small parking lot. They really aren't close together, but they were within 1,000 feet.
Right.
And so that's why it's specifically, when we decided to put that in, we put it in the section for special use permit, so we could take those factors into account and it's not just black and white, yes and no.
Definitely worried about minors, but more the adults that smoke this stuff, can't handle it. So they leave altitude, they go get something to smoke, and they go back in altitude with their kids.
Right,
It's just,
right. But I guess
in the
the
grand
question,
scheme of it.
I
it's a
guess the
little
question
problematic.
is it all that different or could they just go over to daily?
Exactly. This is true.
And where do you
They're
stop?
gonna get it anyway,
And
right?
as we talked about earlier, like if we'd had opted out and Brighton's opted in,
Right.
if there's a dispensary right on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road,
They get the revenue.
yep, it's not that far. They just go right up to it
Right.
and back.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's, you know, I think it comes down to that, like I said, when I look at it, we've not had problems with the legal dispensaries. It's these illegal ones. And I'm hoping that because we have legal ones, they will start to further increase the enforcement here. We really need a conviction or two. We need to get those places shut
Yeah,
down.
they do. need
Again,
it.
kids are getting sick because, I shouldn't say just kids, people
Oh.
are getting sick because
Yeah, because the last place
Can't
burned up, the whole town would have been hot. They had,
600 pounds or something.
yes, it was
yeah.
ridiculous.
So-
And I don't understand how that couldn't stay shut down.
Right.
That's the part that's frustrating to me. That
And-
business is clearly, it's a scofflaw,
Can't,
so why can't it be shut down forever?
the one where the people got sick, can't the health department go in there and close them down?
The problem is our health department has 2, maybe 3 employees.
Okay, that explains that.
Yeah, that's,
seems to be the way of the world right now.
it is, and this really needs to be addressed and enforced. Okay. We're not gonna solve all the
We sure are.
problems for these folks, but any further discussions on this application?
No, sir.
And hearing and seeing none, I'd like to call the roll for the motion to approve.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Nay.
Councilmember Stafford.
Nay.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So congratulations. Again, you're gonna have to bring your site plan to the planning board. They'll be the ones who will handle the whether the vegetating screening is adequate and other stuff like that. And good luck in the process, although there's probably somebody out there who might be rooting against you in the audience. But you know, like I said, it's I honestly don't know what they're gonna do in terms of the number of licenses issued. I don't disagree that we don't need to have 5 or 6 cannabis retail dispensaries in town, but again, I don't think we need as many Starbucks as we have. Yeah, they're here, or car washes.
Right.
So anyway, good luck
Thank you
and
very much.
thank you for your time.
We'll keep you updated as well if we get approved or what's happening along our with our design plans.
Very much would appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Same goes for
Thank
you. And if you hear one way or the other on the license for your applicant, please let us know.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Note for the minutes, Becky, he said we'll be down for building permits and whatnot. Often we have inaudible from the audience, so
Right.
I figured I'd repeat it for. Next up, we have a public hearing for a proposed local law to amend the Town of Henrietta Code regarding training and attendance requirements for members of the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Boards and the appointment of alternate members to said boards. Just to bring people up to speed on this, so New York State put in place minimums for requirements for training for these boards. New York State town law also has that that towns can remove members who don't meet minimum requirements as long as that's in your town code. Why they didn't say when they added the minimum requirements from the state, why didn't they give the town's authority to remove board members who, you know, refuse to meet that minimum training requirement? I don't know. We basically give people up until, what was it, November? Last November 1st, November 15th. October 15th to get the training in, which is plenty of time. Yeah, I think it's November 15th. But we give them plenty of time to get rectified. And we chose that date because that's about the time that we then do notifications for board openings. We've not had generally a huge issue with regards to attendance, although there have been one or two in the past. Oftentimes, when asked, those individuals step down. We just figured, since we're updating the code, let's put it in there. It's not a automatic, it's at the discretion of the chair. And then obviously, if it's the chair themselves, then it's this board. But ultimately, I think it's the board that has to make the decision to remove someone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. But in other words, we wouldn't just do one just because, we'd talk with the chair of that particular board.
And they're entitled to a hearing.
And they're,
That's under state law.
right. And then, the other thing then, while we were doing that, there was also some discussion about for people who might be out sick for a prolonged period of time. We talked about, the use of alternate members. The state law already allows for alternate members to cover in the instances of conflicts of interest. Under municipal home rule laws, we're expanding that use to also cover absentees, but that one is specifically at the recommendation of the chairman of that board. So they can decide if they know someone's going to be missing, they could decide to just have 6 people on the board, or they could decide to call in an alternate. One of the things that we really liked about this is it would allow some folks, lately we've been getting far more applicants, far more qualified and especially very qualified applicants than we do have board openings. This allows to keep those people engaged, to get them early training. And that way, then when a board seat does become open, they'll be able to step right in and essentially already be trained and up to speed on the operation of that board. So we think there's a big benefit from there as well. So that's the idea behind this law. Does anybody wish to make any additional comments? Yeah.
Just thank Dan for all the work he did on it. That's all.
Yep.
Thanks for all the work you did on it.
My pleasure.
Did anybody from the public wish to make comment?
Are we supposed to take numbers or letters or
Nope.
anything? Nope, okay.
I just call on you.
Hi.
Go on,
I did
Mr.
want to,
Neal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Introduce yourself and.
yes,
you
my
have.
name is Larry Neal. I live at 14 Mertensia Lane in Henrietta. And I was a 21-year member of the Henrietta Planning Board. And I wrote myself some notes here to discuss. And one of the things I was really kind of wondering is why was the town coming to this conclusion that they needed an alternate to, but what I found out then is that this is a New York State requirement, whatever, I'm not sure. Are they?
It's not a requirement. It's allowed by New York State law,
Mhm.
but you have to codify it in your town law in order to implement it.
Okay. And before I knew that, I just wanted to explain a little bit about my involvement in the planning board. And it basically was that in 21 years, that was like 450 meetings. I personally only missed 5 meetings in all that time, and 2 of them was because of kidney stones. And I wouldn't wish that
Wow.
on anybody. And
Yeah.
the other reason was because for whatever reason, the previous town engineer decided during the summer months to change his vacation week, changing it into what I had already planned. So I really didn't miss that many meetings, but neither did the people on the planning board. I had a very good planning board who was very conscious about what their responsibility was.
Right.
And in that time frame, yes, we lost people for a particular night, but it only reduced it down to 6. I'm going to say that in that 21 years, there may have been 8, 10 times when we were down to 5. In my recollection, we never were down to 4, and never did we have to postpone a meeting because we didn't have a quorum. Never happened.
Right.
So my thought is that while you need to look at this and perhaps use it, I didn't think it really applied to the planning board. I have no idea about the zoning board and how that, I never was involved in any of that at all.
I guess the way I'll put it, I'd rather have the code there and
Mhm.
never need to use it
Okay,
than come up to the situation where we need it and we don't have it.
well, that's,
Right. so
that's
that-
fine. I'm not opposed to that.
Right.
I understand. And so what I did have was some question is if you did implement it, which maybe this is a rhetorical question because you're just going to move forward with it because it's a suggestion and you want to have it in your pocket. So I had some questions about how you would implement for the alternative, but I'm going to say that doesn't need to be addressed tonight. It'll come up at some point.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay,
Fine.
great.
Points.
But then I did have a thought that I don't know that if it actually applies to you, but you said something tonight, which in the printout that I had from the state of New York, if you were going to remove somebody, it has to go to a public,
Hearing. That's
Hearing.
what, that's what
That's what attorney.
our attorney,
okay.
Dan
I
Estrella
didn't
did make. that
hear from
point.
Dan, but
Yeah.
it had to go to a public
It
hearing.
has to go to a public hearing. It has, right, so I mean, it's a multi-step process.
Right.
It's not just he's out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
All right. Well, then
We don't take removal lightly.
I understand
And,
that.
and again, I don't know of, I'm not aware of anyone who would have been removed under this. But there was a situation where they were having trouble getting somebody to meet their training requirements.
Okay.
And so one of the other thoughts is that you're now potentially eligible for removal might be enough to get that procrastination over.
Good. What I wanted to explain a little bit, maybe you're well aware of this, is that when I became a member back in 1999, Jim Brees gave me a booklet that had 150 pages in it or so, which said how to become a planning board member. Other than that, it was on the job training. And, you know, the first couple of meetings, I basically just kept my mouth shut. And until I learned to find out what exactly should I be doing.
Sure.
But then the county came up with a training program. And Jim Brees required that we all attend these things. For some reason, unless it's back up and running, it's died. And the training courses done by the county were very good. It was the county planning board who did them. We had them on MCC, and they were very beneficial. I don't know if
They still exist. They were, I believe they went virtual during the pandemic,
Oh, okay.
but I do think they are back to in-person.
Yep.
And AOT also has training as well. Association of Towns has training as well.
Yeah. Well, then, so just want to point out that I was very enthusiastic about the idea of planning training. I'm going to wrap up here. I don't want to keep you guys any longer than you are. I did have, over the course of the years, several suggestions as to what changes should be made at the planning board. And I'm going to start off by saying that okay. One of the things that I was faced with a couple of times in this 21 years was that we were asked to approve something that the town did not have a code for. So for one thing, we were asked to work or to come up with a code for 5G, which is one of the things that we ended up having to deal with. And what I was told at the meeting for the first 5G was, well, follow the cell tower codes. Well, they don't apply. So I think that prior to any application coming to the planning board, you should make sure that there's a code that's going to cover it. Another thing I think was the solar, or what was it? The solar farm. I think that was out on the west side. I think that we approved that, or at least it went through the motions of being approved, and there wasn't at the time something to
Yeah, so
cover.
just to be clear on that one, we had the code written. We had made the conscious decision not to encode it because it was big and complicated and we didn't know what we didn't know.
Mhm.
And so that initial applicant agreed to be bound by whatever we put in place and that we would develop the code as they went through the process. But we were following our proposed code. It was there.
Okay.
But we specifically, that one was intentional.
Mhm.
Because again, you put it in place and then have to edit it multiple times. In addition, once I've got it in place, now they have to follow it exactly as is. So like I said, because it was the first one and it was a applicant who we knew well and trusted, for lack of a better way to put it, we were comfortable with essentially developing the code as it went along. And they, like I said, they committed to being bound by the eventual code, even if it was passed after they got approval. So
I'm going to say
that
sounds
was
fine.
unusual.
But
Not
it
like
was
we've had.
unusual, but I kind of think that you were at that meeting where it was approved. And I don't recall that you said that to us, but you very well may have. I just don't recall. It was
Yeah.
several years ago. But in any case, what it was is we were presented with an application for which there was no code, and we were being asked to proceed even though we didn't have a code. All right, so
And I will
I
say,
kind of think you did. I
Right.
really do.
when you go back to Riverton, when Riverton planned unit development was first put in, they had no yard requirements, no setback requirements, none of that. It was all drawn up by the planning board. And for 40 years, 50 years, the only place you could find those rules were in the minutes of the planning board. And so we actually adopted those into the town code. If you look under, we added it to the planned unit development code specifically for that reason, because I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mhm.
You know, I wasn't necessarily around when 5G first came. Let me rephrase that. I wasn't necessarily town supervisor
Mhm.
when 5G first came in.
It's not that old.
But you know, I will say there will be stuff, no matter what you do, with the speed at which technology moves, there will occasionally be applications where we'll have that. And then we will have to take a look at that. Depending on their complexity, yes, I do think
Mhm.
that stuff should be tabled until the code is in place. And one of the things you can do very quickly, they did that when I first took office, there was a moratorium on multifamily, because at the time they were having problems with them taking over all the industrial space.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things you can do is put a short-term moratorium in place on 6G, right? 7G, 8G, whatever. You know, so I don't disagree with you there.
And
One
Mr.
of the
Supervisor,
next
can I
thing-
just add something?
Absolutely.
You know, one of the problems when you encounter that situation is that under New York state law, there are specific timeline requirements when a planning board, for instance, has to act upon an application. And it certainly can be extended, but it generally has to be extended with the consent of the applicant, such that, and usually it's 62 days, such that if there's an application for particular development and you don't have a code and you don't act on it because you don't have a code, then they get a default approval, and that's worse.
Okay.
No, that's good to know.
Mhm.
So basically what that says is if we come across that situation, our chairman needs to let us know immediately. And we have to huddle up, put something in place and get it approved
Mhm.
in 30 days.
Hey, how many days did you say? 62?
62.
Okay.
I'm just saying 30 days is typically,
Right.
if it's something that requires a coordinated review, that's a 30-day
Yeah,
clock.
usually upon the closure of the public hearing, the board is obligated to act to approve or disapprove within 62 days. And if they don't, it's a default approval.
Wow.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Let me wrap this up for you. The next thing I was going to say is that when an application comes to the planning board, where they're going to say, we're grandfathered into this. Prior to them coming to it, it should be verified by somebody at the town. And the case that I in particular recall is that we were asked, we had a cell tower come to us. And what came up in the meeting was that it had been put up prior to codes being written. So somehow it got approved. And that particular day, when they came back to the planning board several years later, and what they wanted to do is do some updates. But what they wanted to do was tear down the existing cell tower and put up a new one. And my comment to the attorney at that point was, well, how can they claim grandfathering if you're going to tear it all the way down? You should have to follow existing codes for cell towers. And the town attorney at that time said that no, they were grandfathered and that was the extent of it. One of the issues with the cell tower is that if the cell tower is 100-foot tall, you have to have 200 feet in order for that tower to fall before it can hit a house. Well, there are two houses that were in existing when they wanted to do this changeover, and they were both probably about 75 feet from the tower. So
One of the things I will say is my understanding of the pre-existing non-conforming uses is that if something happens, building fire, stuff like that, they can rebuild as long as they do not expand. And so I suspect that it's not that opinion, if they were putting up the exact same tower structure, but newer towers, that they've got a strong case that they can do that under the pre-existing non-conforming use. If they were to make it any, 1 foot taller, they're not, then they would have to come under new regulations, because you're not, as I understand it, you're not allowed to expand a non-conforming use. So.
a couple years after this, I talked to another one of the town attorneys, and I don't recall who it was, and explained the situation. And they said, absolutely, they could not put it up, that they had to conform to the new code and consequently wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, again,
do it.
I don't know specifically for cell towers. I'm just telling you. I've had some experience in the 6+ years I've been here with pre-existing non-conforming use, never with the cell tower. So I don't know that answer.
Mhm.
I do know, like I said, with some of these uses, if they sit idle for, I think it's 1 year, then the pre-existing non-conforming use goes away.
Mhm.
And they can never claim that again.
Okay, well, I don't know the particulars of it now. It's been many years, so.
And that would even be if the tower was sitting there, but unused, not being used as a cell tower. So if there was no antennas on it for over a year's time, like I said, I'm trying to extrapolate what I know from a building. So if a building sits vacant for a year's time, it loses its non-conforming.
For whatever reason, the planning board that I was a member of did not know any of that. And had somebody from the town higher up than us examine whether there really was a grandfather situation, or if there were exceptions to it, it would have helped the planning board.
Right.
In any case, the board approved that with my no, but it's something that always bothered me.
I'll have a discussion with the chairs to make sure if they have such a question, they can ask, although like I said, I do know, we've well, as you know, we've
Yeah.
had a very good attorney for the planning board for some time.
Mhm.
And again, since Dan's come over here, Don, who was the former town board attorney, became the planning board attorney. Don has also had a lot of experience in that regard. So,
But it shouldn't have been laid at the planning board's feet without knowing
Right,
all of
right.
the particulars, all the legal things.
Yeah.
And honestly, we got the wrong, from my perspective, we got the wrong advice from the town.
well,
attorney.
again, we'd have to get into the specifics. And I will also say that you can put 10 attorneys in the room and you're probably gonna get 10 different opinions.
No, I mean, that's neither here nor there.
That's right. Yeah, something like that.
Just to continue, without comment, one of my suggestions would be that for the planning board, they get a full-time secretary to record the minutes of the meeting. Simply because, it shouldn't be on, the library has one, you have one. And there are,
Full-time secretary to record minutes.
well, I'm sorry, just for somebody to take, not full-time, just somebody who appears at the meeting, takes the minutes so that you get a better minutes than what is currently happening. I'm not Patty, I think, is still the one who's doing it, but she's supposed to be doing the participating in the meeting itself, not getting somebody's name spelled correctly or something like that. So that's a thought.
Okay.
All right.
I'll have that discussion with the town clerks as to how we do minutes, but like I said, I suspect. I don't know, like I said, I'll take a look at it. I don't want to comment it without knowing
Sure.
full details as to.
I'm
how
throwing all
really-
kinds of things at you. And the last thing I wanted to say, and this is something that I've thought of for a long time, and maybe it's not legal. I don't know that part of it. But it always seemed to me strange that whenever there is a traffic study that needed to be done, the applicant is the one who initiated the traffic study. And I always thought it should be the town who is initiating it, and they send the bill to the applicant. Because it just seems to me that it seems kind of strange that a applicant who is in the county or something like that uses the same engineering company. And that engineering company, for whatever reason, might be giving a report that is favorable to the applicant, as opposed to the town of Henrietta, who the traffic study is for. So the town should initiate the traffic study, send the bill to the applicant, but at least you know that the guy who's working for the town of Henrietta is going to give you the right information and not rely on somebody who is trying to earn a continuing business.
So I don't disagree with you in general. I will also say, though, one of the things, those traffic studies, they're not going to be wrong. However, as somebody in my prior life worked with a lot of consultants, the way I always explain it is everything has a range. There's rarely one right answer, right? In math, yeah, there's typically a single right answer. But for those type of things, it's a range. And so what happens is when it's the applicant, right, they're going to take the most beneficial edge of that range, right? If it's someone who's opposed to it, they're always going to take the least applicable. To your point, a neutral party should choose somewhere in the middle of the range.
Mhm.
One of the things I will say the people who sign those are typically licensed professionals. And so if they were ever to produce a fraudulent report, they would lose their license. That's not going to happen for a developer, not for the kinds of dollars we're talking here.
Right.
So, with that said, when we have a major potential impact, and I'm going to use Chick-fil-A as an example, we did we do have a third-party consultant
Mhm.
who then reviews what they did and says, yeah, this is good, or you know what, they need to adjust these numbers because they're using really favorable, or, you know, they're using data from when the pandemic was in place, or, you know, so on and so forth. So we do that. I don't disagree with you. Like, one of the ones we've been working with developers to change, the thing that doesn't make any sense to me, right? We're looking to take approval of a sewer. They hire somebody to come in and flush and camera the sewer. Then they turn the footage over to us and they pay us to review it. Seems to me it makes a lot more sense. It's cheaper for them and it's better for us. Just pay our guys to flush and camera that sewer. Because, oh, by the way, while they're going down, if they see something, they can stop, turn the camera, look at it. What happens today? They see something that could be suspicious. Now they have to pay us to go in and do yet another inspection. So, I mean, it's also better for the developer. We've been looking at a bunch of those stuff. In fact, when you were first talking about this, I could see the smile on Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert's face, because he and I
Hey, Craig.
and Chris Martin have had those discussions. Like, we also look at, it's crazy to us, some of the practices where they don't do the top coat for the roads for good reason, but then they leave the curbs exposed and those curbs get damaged, and now you have to rip out the curbs and put new curbs back in there. We're like, well, why don't you just, when you're putting in that base coat, shim it up? And then when it's time to put the top coat in, you just mill the edges out, right? There's a lot of practices. I fully agree with you. And as somebody who, the best way you could describe my job at Pictometry as it evolved, well, even from the get-go, I wore a lot of hats, and then I got to have other people put on those hats as we had more employees.
Mhm.
But a lot of it was efficiency and problem solving, right? How can I do things better?
Mhm.
And so we've absolutely been taking a look at that. And I do agree with you for stuff like that, that it does make sense. With that said, with the number of applications we get, it doesn't make sense for us to do it for all of them, right?
Mhm.
It really gets into how big an impact, potential impact are we gonna see from that, that particular development. And that typically determines whether we're gonna have the third-party review. And or if we're gonna do that, we do offer to that to the applicant, because again, rather than them pay for their report and then pay for an independent review, it might be cheaper for them just to pay for the independent report to essentially reimburse the town.
Sure.
So I like this suggestion. Again, I guess that's a little self-congratulatory, because
Yeah, right.
I thought of the same thing when I first got here. So we're on the same page there.
I-
The one last thing I will note, going back to your early comment about training, or people, when they first start in, they sit there and listen to try to absorb stuff on it. Even with the training that the county offers, even with the training the Association of Town offers, you still see it. Most members, when they first get on a board, they just listen and observe.
Mhm.
That's one of the things we want to address with the alternate members, is that these alternate members, now they're not being paid like a regular member, but we would pay for their training. So they would get the training, they could go to these meetings, they could observe, they could learn, but not at a time when their decision is needed. So that the idea is then the next year, if there's a board opening, we first look to our alternate members and say, you know what? He did a really good job. She did a really good job. Let's get that person and appoint them to the board. So to address exactly what you said, because again, I don't care how much training you have, it's not the same thing as being on the board making decisions.
Mhm.
Then they're not so green,
Right.
not so starstruck.
Can I ask one more question about this, and then I'll wrap it up? As far as the alternate is concerned, is your thinking at this point that that person would attend every meeting in the course of the year, or only those meetings where he's called upon?
A little bit of both. And what I mean, they wouldn't attend all the meetings, but I'd want them to attend some meetings to get up to speed on what goes on at at the meetings, right? But it wouldn't need to be all the meetings.
Because the reason I ask that is because in some meetings, the applicant is coming back because of being tabled for whatever reason. And a person who's an alternate coming into that second meeting is not up to speed. But how do you get them up to speed prior to the meeting?
Right. So, I mean, again, going back to that, that might be a scenario where it doesn't, this is why it's the chairman of the board's decision to call for an alternate, because that might not make sense to bring in an alternate because they haven't been up to speed. If it's a conflict of interest issue, right?
Mhm.
Then that person is going to recuse themselves from the first meeting, and then they'd obviously be recusing themselves from the second meeting as well. So that is a good time for an alternate, even though it's a multi-stage meeting, because they're going to be present for both meetings.
Right.
But if, you know, all 7 board members were there for meeting 1, they come back for meeting 2, and one of the board members is missing, you're right, it doesn't make sense to bring in somebody who wasn't at the
At the
meeting. Now,
previous meeting.
maybe if that alternate was sitting out in the audience and paying attention and at the full thing, now the chairman might say, you know what? You know, Craig, you were paying attention, do you feel comfortable sitting in on this one? And if he does, and if the chairman's comfortable with it, that's the chairman's call.
Mhm.
So, you know, we're not dictating
Mhm.
that they have to be used. We're making them available for use if the chairman believes that it's needed. So,
Last thought,
okay,
and I'm leaving.
thank you.
If you had somebody who was coming in to a meeting and is taking the notes as opposed to one of the board members, it could be that those notes are now expanded. That's what I'm hoping, so that they can be handed to an alternate saying, here is what happened at the previous meeting. Perhaps they can help you get up to speed.
Well, what might be a possible thing to discuss is, does it make sense to have an alternate be the one taking the notes? And then you basically rotate which alternate takes minutes.
Or you can record the meeting, and so they could go back and listen to it.
Fine.
Right.
I'm just looking for
Yep.
the notes, the
Yeah.
meeting minutes
Sure.
be expanded from where they are currently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Barry.
you.
And I do agree, I do agree with your suggestion on, the town pays for the studies and then the applicant
Right.
reimburses. I do,
Yep.
always thought.
Yeah,
that was
we've
a
had
good
that
idea.
discussion here as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
for that.
listening to me. I appreciate it.
Anybody else have any comments for the proposed local law? Then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the town of Henrietta code regarding training and attendance requirements for the members of the zoning board of appeals and planning board and the appointment of alternate members to said boards. Really wasn't a good way to shorten that. Ryan.
You got it in.
Okay, can I get my first resolution?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-100-2024 to adopt local law number 1 of 2024 to amend the town of Henrietta code regarding training and attendance requirements for members of the zoning board of appeals and planning board and the appointment of alternate members to said boards.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
aye,
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 6-101/2024 to approve and or ratify the following agreements.
You're a second.
second,
Any discussion? A few of the band names are pretty good. Read them.
I used yours last time.
6 feet apart and super spreader horns. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
aye,
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 6-102, 2024 to authorize bills payable and any associated contracts or agreements for February 27th, 2024 through March 7th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 6-103, 2024 to issue a negative declaration and approve the special use permit application number 2024-003 for Starbucks Coffee Shop by 1100 Jefferson Partners LLC for a new restaurant at 1100 Jefferson Road.
Second. So if you recall, we had the public hearing at the last meeting. All the issues were pretty much resolved. We closed the public hearing. We couldn't vote at that time because the 30 days had not gone by for the seeker.
It was my understanding they were going to be here tonight, that we requested at that meeting, we requested
Don't remember.
somebody from Starbucks to be here.
Is
I
that?
vaguely
we
remember.
asked-
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was here last time, Joshua Saxon, Pastor Associates. Online is David from Starbucks. who
Okay.
is here to answer any questions or
Do
any.
you have any questions?
Yeah, first thing I wanted to say that I did have a chance to talk to Frank, and he was great. He answered a couple of my quick questions I wanted. But one of my concerns there is when the traffic starts backing up like it does in Market Square and congests everything. Could we put on the roadway there, no stopping signs where customers can't stop along the way? And, if it's overflowing, they can't stop.
So you're saying on the interior in the plaza, that drive lane
That
there?
road, yep, that goes between the, Burger King and Five Guys.
Something like a non-idling sign, I think would be doable. I think there is sufficient queuing distance that we have now. I know the one that you're referencing, it's a little bit where it is located in that plaza, there isn't as much queuing as I think as this one, and this one wraps almost all the way around the restaurant and the whole development. So
I wouldn't, I'm sure that when you put the one in Market Square, the same thing was said though.
yeah.
I'm not so sure about that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
They're notorious for packing stuff into their parking lots.
Right. So that's one thing I would like to, put a condition on. And then the other thing is, and we have a representative from Starbucks here.
Yep.
Also, who's,
Yeah, I'm here. Dave Shipes here.
okay. Dave, do have a question for you.
Sure.
I don't know if you've been on all night so far, but we've talked a lot.
I have.
We've talked a lot about businesses in Henrietta that are violating the law, and we're trying to get rid of them, in other words,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's tough to prove if they're violating the law or not. So my question is, I have quite a bit of paperwork here showing Starbucks violates the law when it comes to workers' rights. And so, in Rochester and Buffalo area, they've been found to violate the law. We just would like to put another condition in there. If Starbucks is found to violate the National Labor Relations Act, the town board can revoke their special use permit.
Is this a new, I don't know if I've ever heard that one issue before. Is this a unique Starbucks related request? Obviously, this is a public corporation, and so there's a lot of speculation of what's going on out there that I'm not privy to speak to. I do not have the authority to represent anything labor related for this company.
Okay. Well, there's no speculation because a judge found that a judge found that Starbucks violated the law. We're not just accused. Nobody's just accusing them. A judge found it.
Okay.
And And I just want to make sure we're not getting another business that wants to violate the law. You know, we can't
Well,
pick and choose. what-
there are laws.
Please let me finish. Please let me finish. We can't pick and choose what laws we're gonna, you know, uphold here. And I'd like to just make sure if you are found to violate it, we could revoke the special use permit.
Can you also stop the landlord from receiving rent when you revoke that? If we don't have the right to operate, are you okay with that as well?
That would have to be between you and the landlord. I can't say that.
Okay. I think everybody that is in the town of Henrietta is required to follow the law. And we don't want any special exception to that. I just think putting unusual conditions of approval in a standard application is.
I guess my question on that, Mike, is
The use clause, we're not even required to be a Starbucks. So what if we assign that to somebody else? It's a very complicated what you're bringing up. And I'm concerned to accept that as a condition of approval.
Mike, let me just ask this question though. With that ruling, aren't they required to fix that?
I'm just a real estate.
I'm asking
Yeah,
the
but that-
board member, not you.
Yes, they are, but that doesn't help the people that were
Well, I'm,
harmed by it. So
well, then isn't that the whole, so they're not getting any remuneration for that harm? They're not bringing
so
up
they
a
will let them
lawsuit?
get away with it until they.
No,
Yeah.
he's asking
Oh,
a
I-
question.
Yes, they are. They
Saying
were
my-
reinstated. Yes.
My point is
They were
that
reinstated.
there are avenues to address that.
Right.
I just don't know that land use is the right way to address that particular.
I think it'd be good if we had land use in for where they're illegally selling marijuana. You know, that we could.
Right, that is an illegal
Right.
use.
Right.
This is not, what you're talking about is not an illegal use. They weren't illegally using, right? They weren't selling something, they weren't having residents there, they weren't. So again, if they're in violation of their special use permit with regards to like, they were doing a use that isn't allowed in that area, that's another story. I just don't know, and maybe Dan can comment on this. I don't know that we can tie labor law
Just
into special use permits. I don't know that we can.
Right.
I understand what you're trying to do, and I'm not opposed to it. I also want to operate within the law. So then, if we don't operate in the law, do we revoke? Do you get booted off the board if you propose a law that's illegal? Right? I mean, that's essentially what you're asking. They're gone if they.
well, if we pass a law that's illegal, if we pass something or don't pass something, we obviously get sued
Right.
as
Which,
the last.
oh, by
board
the
knew.
way, you just said
Right.
they're getting sued.
Right.
The judge overturned what they did and they are being sued. So the point is there is recourse, but do you know, are we allowed to tie labor law into a land use decision?
No, a land use decision has to relate to the use of the land. It's not, I understand what, Councilman Stafford's concern is. But I mean, I think that's what the NLRB is for. And I don't think as a municipality, we would have the authority to impose labor regulations, nor do I think that we have the expertise, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, this is if, once again, not if we were, we wouldn't accuse them if they were found guilty of it. These people are, you know, if they were found guilty. That's, I just wanted to clarify. So I just want, you know.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm not certain that we can. The thing you also then get into,
Text message and,
excuse me, one of the things that comes up then is, okay, how do you define that? So if somebody goes to PERB and gets a ruling that they have a grievance and they go to PERB and get a ruling against the company, isn't that a violation of labor law?
No, PERB is much different than the NLRB violations. Yeah, I mean, you go to, I'm sure this court case took weeks. You know, it's not It's not a afternoon hearing to hear, two sides.
I just think you start to
somebody's
get,
grievances.
like I said, first off, I don't know that we can legally do that.
Okay.
I think we just start to get really muddy if we basically try to tie other non-use related stuff into a use permit.
Okay, well, I got my conditions. I would just, the two of them that I would wrote down for you, so.
Dave,
Yes,
you have any plans of violating anybody's rights that works at Starbucks?
no. It's a wonderful place to work. I've been here 12 and a half years and I truly enjoy working here.
Well, the people, maybe some other people might disagree with you that,
Was this something where they were trying to start a union, Michael?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
they violated their rights.
Do you have any
Or so a
Starbucks
judge.
that have unions?
Pardon me?
Do you have any Starbucks that have unions?
It's not really not my expertise. There's so much information available and there's spokesmen for Starbucks that could answer those questions. It's just really not something I can comfortably answer. My understanding is that it's all over the news. And I guess that's what I would read. I'm not there to speak on this, unfortunately. I'm here to speak on a real estate application.
Thanks for your comment.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so Mike, are you looking to make well, if you're gonna make a motion for that one, I would suggest we first make a motion to add the no stopping.
I make a motion that we put the no stopping signs along the road there.
Okay, as an additional condition.
Are you agreeable with that, Josh? Did you say yes to that?
Right.
Well,
Go
not
ahead.
his-
You can say whether you agree or not, but.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
you already did.
I would say from a land use, for the plaza there, I don't see it being an issue. I don't think they would want, queuing cars blocking traffic either on the road.
I've looked at the two.
Right.
That other location, it's a fraction of the queuing this have.
Oh, it is.
What if we basically say this? That that they install no stopping anytime along the Plaza Road as necessitated by backups, by queuing backups. Well, my point is, they don't have to do it initially.
Right.
If they experience issues. If it starts to back up, because I tend to agree with you. So I spent way more time studying queuing theory and vehicles back when we were doing the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So when I look at this, I will be shocked if that ever spills out.
And I'll
Because
be,
It's got a long path. So
Right.
my point is, let's put it this way, that it's as necessitated by queuing backup. So
Okay.
my point is, you don't need to put it in initially, but if it does overflow, then you would be required to put them in. Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
Sick.
Okay, so I will second that motion. Any further comments on this additional condition? Okay, then hearing none, please call the roll on the motion to add this as a second condition.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So now we're discussing the application, or excuse me, the resolution as amended. So it now has two conditions. The first is that the applicant realigns the access road to provide improved traffic circulation within the plaza. That one's already been there. And now we have the second one, which is install no stopping anytime along the plaza road as necessitated by queuing backups.
thanks. And I think some of the changes they've already made are gonna eliminate some of that.
I agree,
So-
because
so I-
that intersection is definitely at the eastern end is definitely confusing for a lot of people. So, good. Any other further comments?
No, sir.
Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll on the amended resolution.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. I won't say I'm looking forward to another Starbucks. I don't drink coffee, so Starbucks doesn't do much for me,
Thank you.
but
My wife will be.
Thank you.
Yes.
that's walking distance for
Yeah.
you.
So we're going to 104, right?
I think I'm up.
Yep, you are.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-104, 2024 to declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review and call for a public hearing regarding the proposed rezoning of land located on the east side of Middle Road and north of the New York State Interstate I-90 from residential R115 to industrial.
Seconded.
So our plan is to have a neighborhood meeting with I think it's 5 houses that are in the area. On the map, they're designated with crosshatch to see whether they want to come over. I do want to write the local law, Dan, that basically states that any existing, so any of those residential houses that come over, they will be considered compliant as long as they, stay compliant with the previous designation, which was R115. Obviously, if they ever switch from being residential, they wouldn't be able to go back if they're included in the rezone. Otherwise, they would just stay in the existing R115, but
Okay, I'll review the non-conforming uses
yeah.
thing and tell you what I think.
I've
about that.
seen I've seen it stated in some of the rezones where it's specific, there's some language, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it basically says, like, sometimes they're considered pre-existing non-conforming, so they can't expand. The problem I have with that, with houses, is if somebody then, they're gonna take care of their father-in-law and they wanna put an apartment on, or a bedroom on the back or something like that. They can't, because you can't expand a non-conforming use. So that's why I wanna, if they're gonna rezone to industrial, but they're currently residential, I want them to be conforming as long as they still have to follow the rules of R115, so they couldn't add this massive addition that pushes right up against the property line. They'd have to follow all the setback rules, but that way they could, if necessary, expand their house. But, again, if they choose to participate, once it goes non-residential, it wouldn't be able to go back. There are also 2 partial, parcels, that's not easily said. One is owned by the school district. They are good with including it, so that the whole thing becomes industrial. The other one is owned by the county. I have not heard back.
Okay. I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, so I don't know why the county wouldn't, although to be honest, it's all wetlands and the county isn't really subject to zoning laws anyway, so I just think from a cleanup standpoint, I basically told the county, unless I hear you object, it's gonna be part of the motion or part of the rezone. That way it cleans it up.
Right.
So. Any other questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-105, 2024 to declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review and call for a public hearing regarding the proposed rezone of land located along Brooks Road from East River Road to west of West Henrietta Road from residential R115 to rural residential with specifics.
Second.
Don't know why I said west to West Henrietta Road, since Brooks Road doesn't go past West Henrietta Road, but we did have a meeting. Was it just today? Could have been yesterday. No, I think it was today. It's been one of those days. With the folks who own the lot that's at the very western end of Brooks Road on the north side. they're the ones who would come in upon hearing that we were doing the rezone. They had done the, as I call it, fill every possible space with a house, subdivision plan. But we've had good discussions. They are very much interested in working with the town, seeing this rezone happen. They're looking at uses that would put little traffic on the road. One of the problems, the Brooks Road, you've never driven on it. It's a beautiful road, except the lanes are a foot narrower than most of the roads in town. Or at least most of the connector roads, main roads. It has no shoulders, no sidewalks. It's just not well suited to heavy traffic. So one of the conditions we have, one of the specifics on here is that the senior housing is an allowed use in rural residential. In this case, we're basically saying that the exits or entrances can't be out to Brooks Road. So on the west end, they could go out to East River Road. On the eastern end, they could go out to West Henrietta Road. I will note, we will probably put in there that that does not include if there has to be a gated emergency exit, with the crash gate.
Right.
Although I'm a fan of not having those if we can figure out how to get the necessary exits elsewhere. And nothing to do with Brooks Road. I just don't like those to begin with. I think they cause confusion for the motorists.
Considering the location right there and the possible density, would there be any conversation about unfortunately having to put a stoplight at East River and Brooks?
Again, when you look at what this is doing, it would actually potentially reduce the amount of traffic on Brooks Road. So I don't think so. If there was, let's say, a senior development put at that corner, because of sight lines, it would be way down at the bottom of the hill on the north side. In fact, one of the things in talking with the developers, I'm going to reach out to the county to get a letter to find, they want to make sure that the county will give them a legal exit onto East River Road because of sight lines. As someone who drives that all the time, at the very bottom of that property, I do think there is sufficient sightline distance. But we'll get something from the county. The use that they would prefer to do, and we just got to get the RG&E as well as state regulators on board with it. They want to put in, it's a company called Q-Cells, and they basically do storage. They pull storage or energy off the grid at night, store it in batteries, and put it back on the grid in the daytime. What that does is give you more capacity in the daytime during peak hours. It requires the differential metering, which is coming. That's what part of the smart meters is about. So electricity rates will be cheaper at night and higher in the daytime. And that's how this company makes its money. But the point is, there's zero traffic. They just sit there. They're essentially like in shipping containers, but they're, they would create a site, sufficient screening. So it's a great use for that because we already have traffic issues on East River Road. We have traffic issues on Brooks Road. So a use that has zero traffic is a great use because it's 74 acres. One of the things we were looking at, the density, the maximum density for senior housing in rural residential is only 6 units per acre, which doesn't sound like a lot until you put it on a 74-acre site, and then it's over 400 units. And they were like, we were asking for 100 and something and change. I said, well, I know. I just wanted to be clear to them that if they're building senior housing, you're not. They were thinking we're taking their density away. I said, you're not. You'd be able to do, the thing, it would only be senior housing. It couldn't be student housing or anything, I guess market rate open housing. But so like I said, that's moving forward. One of the farms, one of the horse farms who needs the additional income from solar panels, they're excited about this. They've been working with their neighbors. So if this goes through, they will be putting in an application for solar arrays, which would keep that horse farm alive. Otherwise, she's likely to sell it.
Right.
And right now, under R115, they could put a lot of houses there. When you look at our comprehensive land use plan, that area is identified as one of the significant agricultural areas in town. So this would actually align with that. If you drive through it, it absolutely feels rural residential, not
I wonder if that's the
R115.
one my granddaughter took horse
Yeah.
back lessons from.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful,
Yep.
stable they have there.
So there's two horse farms on the road. One is Ruckow and the other one is Irish Rose Stables. The Irish Rose is the one with the giant structure.
Yeah.
Then fiance was in the construction business, so that helps.
That's nice.
Okay. Any further comments?
No, sir.
And hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
All right.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-106, 2024. To authorize advertisement requesting proposals for operation of a compost facility on town property at 520 Middle Road, providing free compost service to town residents.
Second.
So as most people are aware, we have a company operating a composting facility currently in the rural residential. Right now, they're doing it under the agricultural composting, I'll call it loophole. As soon as they go to take that compost off site, they would have to have a commercial composting. The problem is that site is ill-suited for composting. It is low, it is wet, and there are houses right nearby. So the town has been looking to do a compost site at our former Phil site. And so we've invited this company to move here, but per our own rules, we have to go out to get other quotes, other companies. When we first started doing this, there were two companies that were doing such work. One of them disappeared, so I don't know that we'll get more than just the one response, but again, we have to go out and do it. And as you guys know, this town board decided that the free service to our composting service for our residents was more important to us than what little revenue we could get from rent. So the request for proposals was written in that vein, and it basically wants them to address how they're going to provide the service, what type of composting they're going to do, that type of stuff. And then it gives the standards by which we will score the results.
Okay.
It's not included in the package because one of the things we've learned, you don't put the package out there or else people pull it down and you're not aware of it. And then if somebody has a correction, we can't send them to everyone. So the packets are only available by request from the town clerk's office. And then they'll send it to you, and that way we have an email contact. So if we have to do a notification, we can send it out to everybody who's requested an application.
So is this gonna be a lease, I mean, on the land itself, are we gonna lease the land to them?
Yes, there would be a lease of some sort.
Okay,
a ground lease.
my concern is, and I appreciate all the work you've done on it. But what if you get the smell problem again, or the neighbors, can we get rid of them eventually?
You can actually, because under the industrial composting, so, one of the things in agricultural law, they're a lot more forgiving. In fact, one can argue completely forgiving for odor. So you can't shut down because you don't, a agricultural operation, because you don't like the smell coming off of the cow manure. Under commercial, we can. under commercial, it does say that you're not supposed to be creating, you know, offensive odors to the surrounding area. So that does have the ability to shut that down if they are not able to solve the problem. With that said, we've had meetings with the CET, I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but they have recommendations on, they've looking at what's currently been happening and also what compost facilities work well. So they're gonna, in fact, they're coming out, I think it's Monday, to meet, look at the site, make recommendations.
That's great.
We've been working with the DEC. We've got a pre-application meeting also Monday. So we're putting in a lot of work on this to try to prevent what happened on Erie Station Road. I know as far as the residents there are concerned, it's not happening fast enough. My plan is if the DEC gives us a blessing, because they're the ones who ultimately authorize the compost site. If they give us a blessing, then I don't have a problem with them new material coming into the fill site instead of the current site, because it's the new material coming in a wet condition that has created, when you look at the neighbors, they've been logging the relative odor strength. That's typically when the worst odors have come in. We can do it under the same agricultural loophole, you know, but I would want to wait till after we have an okay from the DEC. But you know, that's, like I said, we're trying to move it as quickly as possible, but follow all the rules.
So my question is, if another company is a low bidder, are you assuming the Erie Station facility is going to continue?
No, there's no current application in for the Erie Station one. And again, as a commercial composting site, they would have to resolve the odor issue, and they've been unable to do that.
I'm sorry, I thought they could continue the way they're going now, right
some
now,
point-
it's compost in, compost back to the farm.
At some point, I mean, they state right in their stuff, in May, I think it is the month they do it, they have a compost available to all their participating members. Under agricultural law, it doesn't matter whether you sell it or distribute it. If it leaves the farm, it's,
No, I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is, we're hoping that the company that's operating on Erie Station now
correct.
is going to end up operating on Middle Road.
If they don't, what I'm saying is they will not get to continue commercial composting at that site,
Okay,
because they'll have violated the odor issue.
Okay.
They would have to find another location.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know, and again, it's a value, and we've described what those weights are, the different things, so it's not necessarily low bid, it's most valuable bid. So, any other questions?
I do have a Q&A from a virtual member.
Okay,
This was submitted by anonymous attendee. I have two comments. They seem related though, so I'm going to read them together. There are houses nearby for the new proposed site, no? If neighbors next to the new composting site at 520 Middle Road are unable to sell their properties due to the new site, do you intend to provide compensation to the residents?
we legally can't. Those neighbors have been next door to a construction fill site for the whole time. There's this belief that this is a garbage site. There was a video footage, and again, it was taken in a manner to drive a particular angle on the thing. Those garbage bags that were seen at the site were not garbage. It was wood chips and mushroom substrate. One of the things that we're doing on this site though is this site is all, it has a bunch of millings down. It has a really good base. It has walls. We have these concrete barriers that the town had obtained a gazillion of them, I think, roughly. So this site, we've already started to build up berms to the neighboring properties. We're adding vegetation, so this should be fully screened from the neighboring site. So again, if there is an odor issue, then they'll have to correct that or shut down. So I just can't envision that these it's going to affect the value of the neighboring houses.
Good evening, members of the board. Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. I'd like to add on to some of that because of just for footage. I know we've talked about this a little bit and I'll just be able to give you those numbers. The due east households from the Middle Road site is over 2,000 feet right now. So taking that into account with the existing site that we do have problems on, we don't have any complaints registered right now over 1,000 feet. We do have a couple of the neighbors that are close by. The Windeland neighbor, the one that I've talked to, which is 2 or 3 up, did call me the other day with a smell. They're right at about 1,000 feet. But this is the first time I've heard from them in the time frame. Of course, the neighbors next door have multiple issues, but just for the footage and for the distance that we were referring to, we're almost double that distance right now to the proposed homes at Lehigh Ridge, which is due east straight shot. So we have a little bit more barrier there I'm hoping to work with. So,
and there are 2 properties on Middle Road.
yes.
One to the north, one to the south. Again, they're a bit further away and they will be screened from this property. And again, the prevailing wind is out of the west. So even if there's a slight odor, it should be carrying away from them.
Right.
Thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, and we're hoping really too to be able to provide wood chips also, the leaf and brush drop off area or other commercial, if this material starts coming in at a larger quantity, which we expect it to. I'm prepared to, I've reached already out to RM Landscape and a couple companies that if they're interested in dropping off wood chips for free, we have a place to use
Right.
them so that
Great.
we can also help facilitate some of that. We've been a little acquiesced or hesitant to take commercial wood chips and mulch because of, we've just been
At our
trying to,
current
at the
leaf and
current
brush.
site due to
So let me
stops.
just chime in for a second,
Yeah.
Craig, on that. So one of the things we're doing is we're moving our leaf and brush drop off site to this location so that the leaf and brush can be then used in the compost because that wood material greatly reduces the odor and it also improves the quality of the output mulch. And so then as Craig was noting, because we're now going to have that consumed, whereas in the past it just piled up. In the past, we never allowed commercial companies to bring in their leaf and brush drop cuttings. We're going to experiment with allowing any Henrietta company, commercial company, to bring their stuff in. If that is fully consumed and we can take in more, then we'd open it up to, neighboring communities as well. But we're going to kind of take a step approach just to make sure we're not inundated with these things. But, that we've been looking at this and again, working with anybody and everybody who really knows this stuff, who we can, including folks from RIT's, Institute for Sustainability, like I said, the DEC, the CET. So I don't expect there to be a repeat of what happened on Erie Station Road. But to the original question, if there is a repeat, if it does stink, it can be shut down because under commercial code, composting, so on an industrial site, it comes under the other use clause, that basically it says any other industrial use, as long as it does not create odor, noise, dust. So basically it can't create issues for the neighboring properties. So thank you, Craig.
I do have a couple of additional
Sure.
questions, comments from anonymous attendee. Same thing, I'm going to group them all together. First one is, would you like to live next to it? Does the wind blow in one direction? will the new site continue to take in from outside of Monroe County? And I'm sorry, here, this one just came in. Thank you for your commitment to composting. Monroe County and other towns should be composting. Other states divert all their food scraps from their landfills, mainly by composting. It is a vital method of returning nutrients back to the soil and enriching the soil for better growth of plants.
I will say I do have composting and animal manure near my house. It is what it is. So I'd have no objection if they set up on the property next to me, no, to answer the question. Again, with that said, it's got to be done properly. And there have been issues at the current site, and we are working to correct that. Being high and dry, being on impervious surface, that plays a big part. As far as wind direction, predominantly, yes, the wind is blowing largely from west to east. Sometimes out of the southwest, sometimes out of the northwest, almost always out of the west.
And then I think the other one was, will the new site continue to take in from outside of Monroe County?
Yes. I don't know how much they do, because typically sites, you kind of lose the benefit of composting if I'm driving too far. But you know, like if you're talking down in Lima, which is outside of Monroe County, I could easily see Avon and Lima coming up here. Although I also know that there's some discussion about creating another compost site further south of here too, so. Any others? Okay, hearing and seeing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Mike, you're
So,
up.
yep, my tablet just went off, so. Bear with me for one quick minute. Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have a resolution 6-107, 2024. To authorize the town supervisor to enter into necessary agreements with the New York State Department of Transportation regarding the reconstruction of East Henrietta Road.
Second.
So I don't anticipate there being any cost, but I also could see where like maybe we have to adjust one of our sewer manholes or something. I think they're covering all the but just in case there is, I put a cap, a not to exceed number on this.
Good thinking.
And I just used the 10,000, which is what my limit is for approval. So again, I don't think that, as I understand it, they're reimbursing for everything, but just in case I wanted to have a not to exceed number.
When you get a raise over 8,000, I remember 8,000, went to 10,000,
That happened a few years ago.
see?
Not like I get the money. I haven't had a raise.
Yes.
I know you
Did you-
haven't.
Did you get my text?
Mike, I did.
Did you get my text?
Mike complains about it, so,
Yes. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's him.
okay. Any further comments? Oh, I'm just excited that they're finally improving 15A. Unfortunately, it's gonna be 2 years in the process, and then it's not until that's done do they start West Henrietta Road, so,
Nothing happens quick.
no. Okay, hearing and seeing no further comments, please call the roll.
You gotta call the roll first.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 6-108, 2024 to award a quote to DDS Holdco LLC to install a conduit under the Department of Public Works parking lot.
Second. Craig Eckert did a great job on this, got a really good quote. Whenever we say the price, everybody's like, holy cow. So very excited about it because it means we don't have to tear up the new parking lot.
Right.
And in fact, I don't even think you could do an open trench and repave for the price that we're getting for this boring. So that's a phenomenal price.
Sure is. Good job, Craig.
May I, sir? I want to give credit where it's due. So again, Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. This quote is from DDS Companies, a Henrietta company. It's part of their also commitment. We do work with them very well. They know me. We are able to communicate very well, but they are committed to working well in this community. So the praise goes to them as well. Thank you.
Agreed. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-109, 2024 to accept dedication of sanitary and storm sewer systems for the Trailview South subdivision.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-110, 2024. To call for a public hearing regarding the establishment of extension number 227 to the Henrietta Sewer District number 1 for 1740 through 1812 Lehigh Station Road and 1850 through 1928 Lehigh Station Road.
Second.
So obviously this is the next phase of the Lehigh Station Road sewers. We did finally get the agreement from the property owner for to obtain the land that we're gonna need for the pump station. So that's why
Great.
this has been delayed. In fact, was talking with Dan, he's gonna help with the agreement portion, and then we'll use the same realtor law firm to do the final closing. But Dan helping out, putting together that agreement will help keep the cost down from the realtor. So appreciate
That's
that.
great.
Being willing to
Thanks,
take that
Dan.
on.
I know these residents are really excited. This is finally coming around, so be a lot of happy people when they can tap in.
And I will note that we were able to obtain a community development block grant to help offset the cost for this. Any further discussion? Before I call for the roll, I will just say, thanks to the engineering team, especially Luke Bushin, for all the work he's done on this. He's tracked down a lot of easements and residents and updated drawings, and they've done a lot of work to make this happen. So much appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing and seeing no further comment, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-111, 2024. To authorize the purchase of one new 2024 Chevrolet Silverado double work truck with utility box.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Sorry. Go ahead. Let me see. Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 6-112, 2024 to declare item surplus material from the safety department.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 6-113, 2024. To authorize the purchase of splash pad equipment from Vortex Aquatic Structures International for the new town spray park.
Second.
Sorry. No problem. Second. Mike's trying to steal it.
Yep.
So we did, the analysis of the folks who had responded. So when we were first putting this out to bid or first going out to put it up for the ballot referendum, we reached out to the companies that work in the area, got the responses. Once the ballot referendum passed, we've been working with those companies to refine the responses. We kept the pricing information separate. So we did not let one company know what the other one was doing. In fact, most of the time we were doing it pricing blind, just looking to put together the best proposal. Then we got their prices and then we did a comparison. Now, again, before we compared each of them, we took a look at them and said, okay, this is an expensive component for your response. Change it out. Consider changing it out, that type of thing. And then, in fact, it was funny because I had backwards who it was so price blind. I had backwards who was the lowest bidder at the time. But this solution we thought was a bit better from a feature standpoint. They were both pretty close. It was also happened to be a little bit lower in cost. So in both cases, the same, very similar, because we basically gave them a template to say, these are the features we're looking for. This just had a couple more, we'll call active participation ones that we thought really put it over the edge. It has in the one section for the older kids, it has guns that they can shoot at each other. And then they also have those ones, the jets that are on the ground that they can step on each other and make the other ones jump higher. So we just thought that the combination of, like I said, some of the more active features as well as the slightly lower price, this was the winning. We didn't have to go out to bid because both of the companies are on state contracts. In this case, it's NPP Gov. So we can purchase through that method. But like I said, we wanted to do the comparison shopping in a blind. It was similar to how we did the energy performance contract. So very happy with the way it worked out, and we'll hopefully get the stuff ordered, get it in here, and try to be operational by this summer.
And Mr. Supervisor, I should add that I do have an inquiry out to NPP to provide us with some materials to show compliance with General Municipal Law 103. If there's any problem,
I'll forward you what we've already, because I'd reached out to him earlier, so it was last fall, so you weren't the town attorney yet.
I think I've reviewed what they previously sent, and I just,
sure. One of the things I will note is that DASNY has approved purchases through NPP Gov for Vortex equipment.
Right.
So that says to me, I can't believe DASNY would do that without.
No, I understand.
Yep.
It just,
No, I appreciate it. I'm just
we're
letting you
doing
know
due
that.
diligence. I understand.
Okay.
The dog wash in that picture. Is there a dog wash?
No.
The question from the peanut gallery was, is there a dog wash in that picture? Okay, any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-114, 2024 to authorize the supervisor to sign an intermunicipal agreement with Monroe County to construct the East River Road multimodal path.
Seconded.
No, this is a long time coming. In my very first year in office in 2018, there was an individual who was struck by a box truck walking on the shoulder of East River Road. We reached out to our state legislators, and both of them were able to get funds for us to do this. It took 5 years to get through DASNY. Just shy of 5 years. It was ridiculous. By that point, then the only good part about that is Monroe County then was announcing that they were going to be reworking East River Road. So we reached out to them as to whether they could do the bid, they could do the construction oversight, reduce the cost. It should, based on the projections, it will greatly reduce the cost. In fact, one of the things that's going to happen is when we're done, we're probably going to build additional path with the remaining funds. They have to be used in that corridor.
Right.
But we'll basically pick, where to extend it. So very excited that this is finally happening. Portions of this path are already in place, because one of the other things we did then is through the mixed use overlay districts for their the apartment complexes going in there for their civic requirement, space requirement. We said, well, if you build the trail, we'll count 20 feet to either side of it as your civic space. So they both jumped on that and built that trail. So it's a lot farther than we could have ever gotten with the state funding. So very excited about it finally happening. Any other comments?
Just want to say thanks to Senator Gallivan and Assemblyman Harry Bronson.
Yep.
For their work.
Yeah, that's how long it's been. Gallivan doesn't even represent us
Right.
anymore. He was redistricted to the west, so.
Yep.
Okay, hearing and seeing no further comment, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-115, 2024 to make appropriate budget transfers to the 2024 adopted budget.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have the last resolution. It's number 6-116, 2024, to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Do we have any discussion items or comments from the public? Anything online? Do we have any committee or miscellaneous reports from the board?
Yes, from the library board. Library is hosting early voting for the presidential primary starting on March 23rd, going through March 30th. The primary itself takes place on April 2nd. There is an eclipse make and take viewing event going on at the library on March 30th at 10:30 in the morning. And just a reminder that eclipse glasses are available too for family at the library and other different town properties as we head up to that on April 8th.
Any others?
Just attended the zoning board meeting last night. Just a couple small things. Senior center, they're putting, about the signage. Not senior center, the senior housing at Marketplace Mall, putting up some signage, and then another church was putting basically a canopy roof over landing. So
I got a report from the Director of Parks and Recreation, Pam Grunman, that the Friends of Henrietta Parks is moving forward. They did get issued an EIN. So that's a big next step. They don't have their charitable status yet. That's takes a long time because the IRS is involved, but progress is being made. You know, so very excited about that. That's going to be critical for the plan to put in the, what's it called, the Educators Grove. So they'll be able to go out and get the donations for the people who want to put in stuff for the Educators Grove, but they'll also be able to do fundraising for like the gymnastics team to be able to do some fundraising so as to reduce the cost of road trips, things like that, or gymnastics events. So can't wait till that gets in. Thanks to everybody. We've had a number of people from a number of boards and parents of gymnasts be involved, including one who thankfully is an attorney who specializes in not-for-profits.
Wow, that's
So that was hugely beneficial in getting all the paperwork filed because it is non-trivial.
Yeah, the Rush Henrietta Health and Safety Coalition just got their EIN. And we're looking for an attorney to do the second part, which is a 23-page federal application.
Right.
Could you give me that attorney's name when you get a chance?
Reach out to Pam. I don't know who it is, but
I
Pam,
will.
I believe Pam does.
So the Educators Grove is Pinnacle and Winton right there?
Yes, that's Hoskins Park. Yep.
Okay, all right.
And one of the first things that'll actually be done on that won't require the Friends. The Rotary Club has decided that that's what they're going to do for their improvement. They've approached their national chapter. They get every year can request funding to do an improvement in their community. Because it's the Rush Henrietta Rotary, they alternate. Last year it was Rush. This coming year it's Henrietta. So they're going to put in the flag. If you look at the design, right where the road splits, there's a flag and garden and bench kind of structure there. They're going to put that in, and then probably a couple picnic tables. So
Great.
all right.
We have a dinner coming up with the school board for the presentation of their budget.
Oh, that's right. When is?
I want to say the 26th, but let me check. 26th
Okay.
at 5:30
Great.
as your liaison.
But Amy, how can they do the budget if we haven't done change in assessment yet? Sorry, folks, that's an inside joke.
Right.
Were you gonna say something, Ron?
Yeah, we, at our historic, committee, they're moving forward with, getting your jurisdiction and getting, state qualifications for that district. And they're very excited about doing that in the West District. And, on the, Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion, committee, we've been doing some planning for, both, Juneteenth. And for Juneteenth, been speaking to a couple of food trucks for some of the food and things that they need for that. That's historic for Juneteenth. So just very excited.
Yeah, and I do, Pam, if you're by any chance still on, could you give the date for the multicultural?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay, it's Saturday, June 8th,
thank you.
beginning at 3 p.m.
Pam, could you forward me the name of that attorney to my Town of Henrietta email, please?
Yeah, I'll have to get it from Jackie, but yes, I'll get it to you.
Thank you so much.
She did it, yeah. I'll tell you later.
Sounds good. Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I will second. Hearing no objections,